there is often a fear if the market isn't hot to share the data. Fear. If the chart's not going up and to the right, I don't want to talk about it. But the fact is, the power comes in when you can say, like, the chart's not going up and to the right.
Yeah.
Then they go, oh, you're honest with me, Amy. Like, and now let's talk about the strategy. And that can be very powerful.
Yeah. Because the best thing you can do is help a client get out in front of what's going to be happening. Today, I'm joined by someone who has spent his career digging into housing data and helping people make sense of it. Mike Simonsen is the Chief Economist at Compass and the founder and former president of Altos Research. He has a knack for spotting market trends before they make headlines. In this episode, we cover what the data is telling us right now, where the market is headed next year, and what indicators to focus on amid all the noise in the media. We wrap with some burning questions, where you'll hear about everything from Mike's ski racing days to running a camp at Burning Man. If you're overwhelmed by housing data or just want to be more comfortable talking to clients about the economy, this one's for you. Mike, thank you so much for joining me on Corr Values, and I loved having you come and talk to all of our city agents at our summit this week. I really appreciated it.
Great to be here.
Yeah. So we're excited. So if many of you do or don't know, but Mike is obviously Chief Economist for Compass, but I love the idea of talking to somebody about data and numbers when it comes to real estate. So, but let's back up a little bit first. I want to learn about kind of how you got here. And what sparked your curiosity of real estate, learning about data. My understanding is that it started during the .com boom, and it had something to do with maybe you actually being someone who was trying to buy or sell a house. Maybe that's where it started with.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So I've always done data software, and I was in Silicon Valley doing data software, networking stuff, and I bought a house, a little old piece of shit Silicon Valley house with a $1 million mortgage, and I'm 30 years old.
Yeah.
And it was the tail end of the .com bubble. And I knew it. Everybody knew it was that. And, two bubbles ago, I like to say, in Silicon Valley. And it's, it was at that moment that there was suddenly, information about what homes were for sale was available online. And for the first time. Before that, you had to the agent had the dot matrix printout of what was available. And
we had all the information, right?
And now it's on. And so I simply started tracking. And so this was now 2001 to 2002. And I started tracking all the homes for sale and what their prices were. And I started building a model for my own use at that time. The median home price in this part of Silicon Valley, and I did the old real estate adage, buy the cheapest house in the expensive neighborhood. And I'd done that. But the median price in that neighborhood fell by a third.
Wow.
In a couple of years. And, as the .com bubble evaporated. But what I'd realized was that all of the high-priced homes that were like stock option homes, those all came down because those all went away. But the lowest price house didn't go anywhere. My house was still 3 years later the cheapest house that had sold. And I knew that, and nobody else could articulate it. Certainly none of the data providers. A really skilled real estate agent in the space would have been able to articulate it, but nobody could talk about it. And I would see things like, the newspaper would do the real estate section once a quarter and be like, these zip codes are red and these are green and these are up or down. And mine was a 0. Like, there were no transactions in the period it was looking at. And it's like, there are 60 homes on the market. I can tell you exactly what's happening here.
Interesting.
And so I started to realize I had more information than anybody. so I was doing it, and I at some point decided that we have that insight that I should go commercialize it and build it as a company and roll it out for the whole country and see what we could do. And that was really the start there. It was really a personal need to understand what was happening to my giant mortgage when I was 30 years old.
And it's amazing, because I think, data is such an important part of our business, especially when we're talking with clients. And, it's interesting because when I first got into real estate, I got my license in 2002. And I remember it was kind of right at that shift, though, where we really still held a lot of the information and the insight. And in some ways, maybe not even intentionally, could kind of control a little bit of the market conditions, right? But then insert someone like yourself where you're suddenly making this data available. It changes what the consumer is able to know and look at and kind of start educating themselves. And, I think the one thing I've always said, and I'm kind of just curious of your take, is that, and I think your data is pretty real time. When you were talking, and we were talking offline about how you try to make it as real time as possible. But what I feel, and when I sold, is that I would feel the market change before the data showed up. Because as agents, we just see it and feel it because we get more canceled showing requests, or it just slows down. Suddenly I'm not taking as many buyers out, right? It's like we can feel it, but we always feel like the data lags. So I think that it's interesting because getting it as real time is super helpful.
Yes, and I think you're absolutely right. There is there is that you get the vibes first, and there are things that are difficult to track in data, like a canceled showing. Well, you didn't have there's no number tracking that. So what does that really mean? And so one of the things though that was fascinating was that before we started Altos, because there were 700 different MLSs and they weren't run by data people, and they didn't barely tracked anything. They could tell you how many houses sold in a month, but like I can tell you the days on market, the day before Lehman Brothers broke in 2007 and the day and after, and nobody kept that at the time. And so they didn't know, what the new listings volume is and where those prices, because nobody tracked it. And so let alone canceled showings, right? Those kind of things were not known. So, a really skillful agent knows the things and is the expert, and a rare agent is very skillful at communicating that.
Yes.
And so we, use the data to tell the story, to help us understand what's happening. And so, I remember I was working with, when I was starting the company, before I'd launched the company, quit my day job in January 1 of 2006. So this might have been 2005.
Okay.
We could see the market turning in Silicon Valley. And I had a friend who was shopping for a home, and he said he kept getting the new listings alerts. He said, that house has been listed before. They pulled it off the market and then they listed it again. And so all the new listings were repeats. And so in 2007, I started tracking relist rates.
Interesting.
And the level of homes that are being relisted is a powerful indicator. And so, as a skilled agent, you're like, oh, that one they didn't sell it, it's relisted.
Yeah.
And if you're just, new into the market, then you're, as a home buyer, you're like, oh, these new listings.
Yeah.
But so those things. And so now though you have a relist rate to track. And if the relist rate is climbing, that's a signal that the market is cooling, and that's a message then to potential sellers. It's also a message to buyers who are in their process. The market's cooling, the conditions are changing. And so, measuring things like relist rate or the percent of properties with price reductions, nobody knew that.
Yeah.
They barely knew.
Where did you, get all of your information? Like, where did you get the information to then start putting together your data platform?
Yeah, we were watching. So we just built a database of all the homes in the U.S. and we just watched for which ones were for sale, what's the pricing, and what's it changed? And we could say like, oh, this one's now has a price reduction.
Wait, so you had a database of every house in the United States?
In the United States.
Wow.
Yeah. And
Okay.
and it's 100 million. It's a known number. And so
Yeah.
you have that house, and so then all you're doing is watching, which ones are
Movement.
what movement, and how many got listed for sale. And so then, as you mentioned, the real time, like we do that every week. Check every home for sale in the country every week, all the pricing, all the supply and demand, all the changes in that data. Traditional housing data is once a month. And so now we're recording this in September. And by the end of September, they will, the headlines will start talking about the August sales.
Yeah.
And
we're already midway through September.
Midway through September. And
Yeah.
I can tell you what the October sales are going to be because they're going when they're in contract right now.
Yeah.
And so, it's months behind. And, that was one of the things we saw early on was like, there was a big Wall Street report that I remember charging tens of thousands of dollars for the real estate report. And it said, Silicon Valley real estate is poised to tank. It was maybe 2004 because they were looking at inventory in February. They published the report in May, and people were reading it in like July. But by July, all that inventory was gone, and the market was on fire.
Interesting.
But it was months behind, and people were paying tens of thousands of dollars for this report. It's like
it's outdated.
It's outdated.
It's like a
by
6 month lag.
And so publish everything every week. Track the market through Friday, publish on Monday. And so we have the latest insights on. That's how we do it.
I'm excited. I'll be honest. I haven't really tapped into Altos, but that's like on my list for this week for sure. So let me ask you this. What are one or two things that are jumping out to you right now about the housing market? So we are middle of September. Full disclosure, this will probably be out the first week of October, so not too far away. So in a 2-week time period. But what are you seeing kind of right now that are things that our agents out there should really be paying attention to?
Well, the big headline of the last few years nationally has been home sales are down, but prices are up. And the headlines are still record prices. You'll still see record prices, but sales have been down for 3 years. And what's happening right now is that sales are inching higher nationally, and prices are probably going to tick lower than last year. And so that headline is going to reverse.
Got it.
So that's going to be a very different message that consumers are going to hear. They're going to have that different perspective when they start coming into the market. So agents need to be prepared for that. In the industry, we care about transaction volume, but consumers care about the price number. And so that's going to be a different headline for folks likely. And prices are still positive nationally, still barely positive year over year. And if we get lucky, mortgage rates fall a little bit and maybe prices stay elevated a little bit. But if we don't get lucky and rates jump again, then I would expect prices to dip. And that'll be a different headline.
And I think it's interesting because a lot of times these headlines are national headlines, right? Yes. Or the headlines are, even if it's a local paper, are sort of based off of national insights. And so I think it's important for agents to also know that those are going to be the headlines because it might be different in their local market. Like here in Chicago and in the Chicago suburbs right now, prices are still going, and we are not seeing an increase in inventory, and especially in a lot of these, markets. I'm kind of Wilmette, Winnetka, New Trier area, just as one example, but we're not seeing that slow down right now.
That's right. There's inventories maybe up, I think it's 11% in Illinois year over year, so up a little bit. A few more homes for sale. But in general, in Chicago, we've been selling in the north and buying in the south, migrating to the south, and over the last few years, as it got expensive to do that move, interest rates, but also, washing machines and insurance, all these things are more expensive. We stopped moving. So we're selling fewer homes in Winnetka and buying fewer homes in Sarasota. And so inventory is high in Sarasota, and it's still very tight, barely off the pandemic lows in places like Winnetka.
And it might also be because of just some of the hurricanes and the insurance and some of the risk of moving to someplace like Florida, where that's also a real consideration for people to
That's
have
right.
to take
It's
into
not just
place.
mortgage rates. It's
Yeah.
a lot of other
It's a
things that have gone into
lifestyle
that. Yeah.
altogether. Yeah. So you've been known to spot market trends before they make the headlines. What's your outlook for next year, 2026? And are there any other indicators or things as we move into next year that we should be thinking about?
Well, there have been over the last 3 years, mortgage rates have been basically 6.5 to 7.25%. There have been two moments when rates dipped below 6.5, got close to 6, and in both those moments, transaction volume picked up. Prices were surprisingly picked up in both those cases. And right now, mortgage rates just dipped under 6.5. They're at like 6.3. If they get, if this is a third moment where we get rates back down, we should see greater transaction volumes, but we'll also see tighter inventory and probably price appreciation. In a falling interest rate environment, demand moves faster than supply. So that's what I would expect us to see if we get lucky and mortgage rates decline in the next.
Because buyers are really going to be ready to jump, but sellers, even considering getting kind of into the market, might take a little bit longer.
But they take longer. So you can imagine a seller who needs to see a few months of buyer, like, oh, there are people buying houses. Now they start thinking about listing their house for sale. They'll go, okay, let's list, in the spring. But buyers maybe, have been on the sidelines and they say, okay, my payments are a couple $100 cheaper and it's time to take action.
Yeah. So, I feel like for a lot of sellers too, it's like they've kind of just been waiting for rates. Well, we don't have to, we don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
And that's really tough because I think there is a large percentage of baby boomers, right, that are really in a spot where they would move but they don't have to, right? And I think we've got a lot of the millennial pent up demand of they want those houses that boomers are not ready to let go of. Next year, what do you think? Like, what is the move me rate? Like, do you think there is a number? Is it under 6%? Will we even possibly get there next year? But is there something where you think at some point someone will say, you know what, sitting on this rate for a long time is great, but it's time to move on with life. And now these rates look good enough that we might do something.
Well, I think that like I said, there's been these two moments when we got close to 6% and we saw the needle move on demand. It wasn't, a ton, but it was notable. So 6.5 is not enough, but 6 was. And then if there's a 5 in front of that number, I think we'd see a notably different housing market. On the other hand, how do we get to rates falling like that? That means that the economy is slowing, jobs, unemployment is increasing. And if those are happening, then you'll have that counterbalance a little bit on that. And so there are two sides to that coin.
Yeah. And it's like, will that be good for us? It's like sometimes the careful what you wish for, because even though if we got rates low enough where we saw some of that, maybe it helps with some inventory. But, what you're suggesting is there's going to be other economic indicators that make it not so great or more, might be problematic.
Yeah. And in fact, you mentioned the baby boomers who are essentially hoarding homes because they have ultra cheap rates. And so the way we get out of that, the lock-in where people are is actually multiple years at higher rates. So each year there's 4 million people buy homes, and if they buy them at higher rates, those people are more likely to relist. They're less likely to hoard the properties. And so over time, that allows more years at higher rates is what actually alleviates that lock-in. If rates were to fall back into 4, then people buy now again and hoard it forever.
Got it.
And so it's actually the long term, the way out is more years at higher rates.
So we just have to get used to locking in. We're better off getting used to locking in at the mid 6s, even if we bump up and down either way. But it's going to be healthier for us in the long term.
That's what I think. And so we'll get some transaction. You get some transaction volume. People take action, but each year you get a little more. And right now, home sales are coming in 3% more than last year, so it's starting to grow. So each year at higher rates, you get a little bit of growth. And that's how
I think another problem we have around here is just lack of new housing development, right? Being creative. Like I know in some of the suburban markets, people want to downsize from their large house, but there's really nowhere to go. Do you have any indication, insight, or anything that you're seeing? Because I feel like in Illinois, it's slow. I think we're 49 out of 50 as far as states with any sort of new housing starts and, bringing new inventory, brand new inventory into the market. Are you seeing other states anywhere else where they're trying to do that to help solve this lack of inventory scenario?
I think that there is starting to be a shift in the zeitgeist, the political will to help solve some of the supply challenges.
Okay.
We've had, it's very easy for one person to block a development from happening.
Yes.
And so, I live in California, and it's the poster child for that. And so, I wrote a research paper earlier in the year called Unaffordable by Design. Like, everything we do in this country is designed to help the person who already owns, and whether it's taxes or it's the building policies, all the things about people who already own. But as a result, that makes it unaffordable for the people who don't own. And those are legitimate reasons. Like they're all like, my mom runs a nonprofit, and they buy suburban land out in the northwest suburbs and turn it back into the native prairie ecology. But that means you're not building houses on it. And it's a perfectly amazing ecological, environmental advantage, neat process, but also it makes it fewer houses.
Well, I mean, there's only so much land, right? There's only, it's finite. Interesting. All right. So I want to shift gears a little bit because I want to talk about agents and, agents feeling really comfortable talking to clients about the economics of it all and data, so I feel like there's a lot of places to get information. What should we be focusing on? Like, if you were to tell an agent, these are the things that you should be looking at as far as the data when you're sitting down and you're talking to clients, what should they be narrowing in on?
Well, if for an agent who is maybe not super comfortable with the data, the technique I like is knowing one number, like, here's where inventory is compared to last year. Just go, what? There's 11% more homes on the market. It's like, it's not a lot more, it's a little more. And having just a couple of little numbers available really goes a long way to illustrating your point. And in fact, when, I no longer run Altos, but at Altos, when the market reports, you take a market report and you're going into the listing presentation, the question I like is, are you a big geek or a little geek? Because if you're a big geek, I'm going to put this whole market report in your inbox every Monday, and you're going to watch it and you're not. But if you're a little geek, I just want you to look at one number. And in the Altos report, we have a market action index, is buy supply versus demand, or the price reductions. If this price reductions number is climbing when we have your house listed for sale, that's the market telling us there's more seller competition, fewer buyers. And so if this is climbing while we have your house listed for sale, that's the market giving us a signal. Maybe we need to do something with the price. We want to be ahead of this curve. And then if you've set that up properly in the listing presentation, then the client goes, Amy, I've been watching this number. Maybe we need to do a price cut. And so
they're calling you to give the price reduction.
Yes.
I love it.
And you set that up in the, like, it's not me, like the market said, I'm going to put this in your inbox. And so that's a really effective technique. And then the agent doesn't have to look at every report for every part of town and every neighborhood. They just like, I'm going to put this in. You watch the number, and it can be very powerful.
It's such a great suggestion. And what I like about it is a couple things. Sometimes we talk about days on market, absorption rate, and there are all of these terms that we're comfortable with. And sometimes for a consumer, it's really hard for them to understand what it is exactly that you're talking about. But price reductions, that's a really easy thing. And it's probably one of the most significant things that they care about. So I love putting it almost into a context that matters most to them.
That's right.
And it's one thing for them to watch.
One thing for them to watch. With price reductions, is tricky. Like there's always some. In every market, there's price reductions. And so maybe a third of homes take a price cut before they sell. And so if the market's hot, maybe it's 30% or 25, only 25 needed to take a price cut. On the other hand, if the market's cooling, Now 40% take a price cut. And so you can really gauge at a glance what's happening in a market by watching things like price cuts.
And a hyper-local market, right?
Yes.
Because I think sometimes, we give too much data and sometimes it's too broad, but I think you can do it by a particular, neighborhood or submarket and just be able to say, here's these 10 properties that are on.
Yeah.
Let's pay attention to what's happening to them. And it allows them to kind of concentrate also on the right information, right? Because I think if you leave clients to their own devices, they're listening to the headlines. They're trying to figure out their own data on Zillow. So this is almost you as an agent being able to anchor them to a report and a number and giving them homework of let's monitor this every week and see how it goes.
Yeah. And I think we could talk about this for a long time about agents and what's compelling in the data. There is often a fear if the market isn't hot to share the data. There's a fear. If the chart's not going up and to the right, I don't want to talk about it. But the fact is, the power comes in when you can say, like, the chart's not going up and to the right.
Yeah.
Then they go, oh, like you're honest with me, Amy. Like, and now let's talk about the strategy. And that can be very powerful.
Yeah. Because the best thing you can do is help a client get out in front of what's going to be happening. So I love that. I think data is power. I think, you just already gave us a couple of nuggets. I like, are you a big geek? Are you a little geek? I think that's great. So everyone use that because I like it. But even just that very simple and efficient data point is going to make it a lot easier, I think, for our agents to get comfortable talking as these markets shift. So I want to talk about shifting markets. I want to talk about Chicago because we are right now outperforming most of the country. Based on what you're seeing in other markets, do you see us softening over the next, 12 to 18 months? What's your thought on Chicagoland?
So yeah, Chicago is outperforming price wise because inventory's been super tight as we're selling fewer homes. But if I'm a young family in Chicago and I used to buy the guy who moved to Sarasota, but he didn't move.
Yeah.
And so I still need to buy a house. So it's been tighter. And so then in the next year, mortgage rates are coming down because things like unemployment's rising. And so a risk in the Chicago area is that unemployment rises faster than the rest of the country. And so that could be, you might see that soften the market. And in California's unemployment rate is higher still. And we saw inventory climb this year for the first time.
Okay.
And so I think that's something to keep an eye on for the Chicago area that might slow the price momentum a little bit. So then you have slightly less demand. You have slightly more sellers in that environment. People lose their job or they're more worried about jobs and things like that then create a little more inventory.
Yeah. So that could be something for us to look at. But, in my opinion, I feel like we're going to kind of be steady for a while. I think we're going to see in Chicagoland what we've been seeing over the last, couple of years.
Yeah. So it's a slow climb out of the tight inventory, multiple years at higher rates. And so even at 6, that still helps bring people, reset those. So in general, like a little more inventory next year, a little more transactions, and because there's the price pressures across the country, I don't see strong price appreciation, like not a huge big up year, but a little bit of up year, because inventory is still pretty tight in Chicago.
Yeah. So Altos Research, a great resource. I'm going to actually add a link to it, and the way that an agent can actually become a member to use that, I think will be really just an incredible way for them to stay real time with what's happening. All right. We are going to shift gears a little bit though, Mike. Are you ready for this?
All right.
All right. That was all business. Now this is all getting to know Mike and what he likes to do when he isn't crunching numbers and doing all things real estate data. This is our burning question for Mike. You ready for this? All right. The word burning is intentional, and that is because you were just at Burning Man a couple weeks ago?
Yes.
All right. And I've never been. I've had friends that have gone and said it is a life-changing experience. So not only were you there, but my understanding is you run a camp at Burning Man. So for those of us who have never been, tell me, what does this entail? Not just being there, but running a camp.
So so you're camping in the desert for a week, and
Okay.
you maybe have RVs or tents and things, and being in a camp means you have some infrastructure. Like we have like 150 people that come in from 15 countries or so around the world, and we have like kitchen infrastructure, big shade structure, and giant we have giant speakers and sound systems and things. So you host parties, and everybody at Burning Man, like it's participation. There's no like the only events are what the attendees host.
Okay.
And so the camp hosts parties and hosts talks and hosts events and things. And so every camp around there, and that's what hosting a camp is about.
Okay, so you're like a party planner at Burning Man.
Kind of, yeah. Okay. Kind of a party planner.
Okay, can I be on the list for next year?
Sure.
I mean,
absolutely.
Is Burning Man an easy thing? Can I just show up or do I have to like have some practice camping? Do I have to? Will I be roughing it?
Because we have a camp, you don't have to have practice camping.
Okay.
But it is not an easy thing.
Okay.
It's in the middle of the desert, and it's like it takes some effort, but yes, you absolutely can.
Okay. All right. Well, put me on the list. I might be a maybe for next year. All right. The other thing, you are originally from Chicago. Let me ask you this. What do you miss most about living here?
I was downtown this morning. It's gorgeous weather. I'm an architecture geek, and Chicago is just so gorgeous and looks so pretty, and like so. Like I love being downtown and driving in last night from the airport. And, it's like, I love the feel of the city and the look of the city. It's terrific.
Well, I mean, you can't beat this time of year, though, in Chicago. I'll ask you that when you're back in February.
That's right. It's not like this every day.
Yeah, right. Have you forgotten where you live now is a little bit closer to this every day. All right. Well, you now are living actually where I grew up. I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, South San Francisco, to be exact. What's one thing that you've grown to love living out there, and you can't say it's the weather?
I have built a really neat community of people, and the thinkers and creators and doers, and I really love the people in San Francisco and the people I get to hang out with every day. I have some really cool friends doing neat stuff, and through a bunch of channels, partly being an entrepreneur and being an entrepreneurs organization, and partly in places like Burning Man, and you meet like really creative, fascinating folks. So I love the community of people that I built in San Francisco.
And it's really a collaboration of people from so many different walks of the world. Like that, I know, because I lived in San Francisco before I moved to Chicago. And that was one of the biggest things, is so many people that traveled to move and live and be in San Francisco and the Bay Area, which is different than here. I find that people all come back here because they've been third and fourth generation Chicagoans. So it's a little bit of a different vibe.
That's right. There are people from all over the world that came to Silicon Valley for that reason, and so yeah, that's definitely part of the mix.
Yeah. All right. So if you weren't interesting enough with this whole Burning Man thing, I also looked on your Instagram and got some information about the fact that you used to be a ski racer in college. How'd you get into that?
Well, I grew up in Chicago, so it was never
right. Wasn't that obvious that you could be a ski racer?
Both my parents are skiers, and so I grew up skiing and ski racing, and I actually grew up skiing in a little ski resort, a ski area called Wilmot.
You're kidding.
Yeah.
So everyone out there, if you started, then my girl started at Wilmot, so right? They too could be ski racers someday.
They could, yes. Okay. And well, of course, Wilmot is 200 vertical feet, and so we just raced all day, and that's what we did. And so. That drew me out west to Tahoe for the was the magnet there, and so that was a big part of my life as an athlete, as a kid.
That's fun. So even though I grew up out in California, I didn't start skiing or try it until I was 18, and my first spot was Squaw Valley. But the easy runs were closed for the day, so I had to start on some of the hardest ones. So needless to say, I'm still a little shaky when it comes to skiing, but I love it. I grew up going to Tahoe every summer. So, all All right, let me ask you this question. So real estate agents are CEOs of their own business. Any tips? You started Altos Research, grew it, sold it, but what words of advice can you give somebody who has to basically run their business, get up every day, and be the person that pushes everything forward?
It's kind of interesting with the love in the background here. I went through all the cycles, the ups and down cycles as an entrepreneur, and there was a period where I had to relearn how to love my business and love my customers and like be very intentional about that every day. We can get in a mode where it's like, oh, these people are wrong, and you complain and it can spiral down.
Yeah.
And I went through, big, hard personal challenges and managed to figure out how to re-love the business, re-love the customers, the employees, all of the things.
Wow.
And so that intentionally focusing on love was really useful for the growth of the company.
Gosh, that's so great because as real estate agents, it can be a grind. There are those times where we have to find how are we going to love our clients and love what we do again, right? And I like that you just call that out and it's so honest because there are times when it's great and you love what you're doing, and other times it's like you're pushing yourself to get up and, do what you need to and just kind of press forward. So I think that that's really, really powerful advice. And I love that you integrate the love because it's the truth. All right, last question to wrap. So you've had an amazing career and more in front of you as Compass's chief economist. So I'm excited that we have the opportunity to tap into you. This is our first opportunity meeting, but I'm hoping that we are going to be able to do great things in the future together. And if I look at your Instagram, which everyone, you should check it out because there's a lot more fun than business on that feed. You obviously have a really great time. You don't take yourself too seriously, which I appreciate. What's your secret to doing it all and having it all?
I have in the last, 15 years or so, have spent, as I built the community, I think, especially in the community in San Francisco, that is an inspiring group of people. And there are people around me who I am just like, I feel like I don't do anything fun. That people who really do amazing things all the time. And so that's really helped me elevate my experience. And I think that part of the community is a big part of my mix and has really helped me, do great stuff.
Well, they do say you are who you surround yourself with, right?
Yeah.
So from your Instagram feed, it seems like you surround yourself with some pretty fun people. So, Mike, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate all of your insight. You dropped some really great nuggets for agents to take away and implement in their business. And I'm excited to continue the conversation and see what we can do together moving forward.
My pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. And everybody, thanks so much for joining. I'll see you next time on Corr Values.